Anna Seawold, and this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about growing ourselves while raising our children. I'm a psychologist, educator, and parent coach. And on this podcast, I explore how you can connect to your authentic self, practice radical self-care, and raise emotionally healthy children. Let's break the cycle of generational trauma for a more peaceful, kind, and compassionate world. Today, how to raise capable and resilient children. I am speaking with Dr. Cheryl Ziegler. She is a returning guest. She first appeared on the podcast back in 2018 when her book, Mommy Burnout, came out. I'll have a link in the show notes to her first episode. Cheryl is a clinical psychologist, play therapist, podcast host, and author of the upcoming book, The Crucial Years, The Essential Guide to Mental Health and Modern Puberty in Middle Childhood. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and often overlooked stage of childhood development, the crucial years, the period between ages 6 and 12. You might be thinking, wait, isn't that the time when kids are just kind of cruising through school? Well, Cheryl challenges that idea, arguing that these are actually foundational years for setting up a child's future, shaping their emotional regulation, and laying the groundwork for adulthood. We're going to explore the idea that these years are not just a pause between the early childhood and teen years, but a massive transition. It's a time when children begin to develop a sense of capability, learning what they're good at, taking risks, and figuring things out for themselves. We also talk about practical tools and concepts like the window of tolerance and the importance of co-regulation in helping children navigate their emotional ups and downs. Today's episode is packed with insights on how we can help kids build confidence, foster resilience, and prepare them for adolescence and beyond. I hope you'll find this conversation helpful. Please enjoy, and thank you for listening. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to have you again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me again. I'm thrilled to be talking to you again.
I think it was back in 2018 when your book came out first.
That's right. Mommy Burnout. Yeah, 7 years ago.
7 years ago we met. Wow. Okay. You have a new book out. Tell us the name of the new book.
Yeah, it's called The Crucial Years, The Essential Guide to Mental Health and Modern Puberty in Middle Childhood.
Let's off the get-go, let's explain what crucial years are, what it means, and what's the middle childhood. I think a lot of people confuse that.
Yes, they do. I know. I'm kind of excited. There's like a couple of terms that I'm bringing out and back that are deep into psychology and child development that we just don't use. But the crucial years came from, we really actually struggled with how to title the book. And it came from because these years, so the ages of 6 to 12, so there's early childhood, 0 to 5. And then most people call like this, these middle years, they'll just say the school age years. It's like just an afterthought. Like, oh yeah, well then there's, sort of first grade through sixth grade. Those are just childhood years. And then we have, tweens or pre-adolescent and then adolescence. And so in the field of psychology, this age, Freud called latency, and people refer to as the forgotten years. And they're just thought of as like, oh, okay, they're in school now full time. They're not yet teenagers that we already know. We're prepared for that. This is just the time where now they're getting dropped off at birthday parties and they go to school all day long. And so people kick back. It feels like, I can rest and relax a little bit. And I'm not saying you can't rest and, relax and enjoy that you got through 0 to 5, but actually this is the meat of what is going to set them up for adolescence and young adulthood. It's now 6 to 12. So all the stages in child development just have different purposes. And I'm here to shine a light on the incredibly important purpose and changes that are happening in kids ages 6 to 12.
Yeah, I feel like crucial years, it's all crucial, right? The teenagers are crucial. The 1, 2, 3 is crucial for different reasons. All of it is crucial. When first I read the title of your book, I said, oh, it's about teenage years, because immediately my brain went to crucial years, teenage years. Even as a professional, I make that mistake, right? That misjudgment. So I think anything, and you write this in the book, I like that. It said like middle age, middle this, anything middle is always hard.
Yeah, middle child.
Middle
They're,
child,
they're
middle.
sort of forgotten, right? Whether it literally happens or not, the thought, yeah, anything in the middle.
Yeah. So why are these years crucial? Tell us what parents need to know developmentally, what happens emotionally, cognitively, for children's development.
Yes, so much. But I'll start with this. So when we focus on, 0 to 3 or 0 to 5, there's a lot of attachment, right? You have to be there for their child, you keeping them alive, you're helping them walk and talk and roll over and all of those things. It's so clear. You go to the pediatrician and you say, my child is 9 months old, and boom, they've got a list. You're going to know this is what they should be doing. This is how they should be speaking. This is how they should be walking, moving, all the things. And as soon as 5 comes, it's sort of like, okay, now it's time to learn how to read and write. It's time to learn school, right? Play drops off. Now it does, right? So in America, play drops off. And now we start focusing on the real stuff, the academics, right? And parents are very impressed, like, oh, they're reading these beginner books and oh, they're doing this math, and a lot of focus on that cognitive development. Well, how are they? They're so smart and they're learning. And that is just one part of what they do. I always look at other countries. I'm a play therapist too. And when, we're obsessed with looking at, how the Danish do it and all these other things in the Netherlands and whatever. And I always say, they don't actually start teaching those kids how to read until they're 7 or 8 years old. That's not a thought. They allow the social, emotional, and moral development that starts at age 6 to play itself out through play the way it should be. That is a kid's language. And, they have better education than us. They have better outcomes than us. They have better happiness than like every single metric is better, way better than ours. And so the real purpose of 6 to 12, right? I took it, there's different theorists. They're not really that off from each other, but I really based this book on Erik Erikson's stages. And 6 to 12, he basically says this is industry versus inferiority. And what that means is industry. So I've been using the term more. It's sort of an old term and I'm bringing it back. You want a kid to end this stage feeling industrious, meaning that they feel capable. I know what I'm good at. I am capable of doing all sorts of things. I can take a bus. I can make a meal. I can clean a house. I can do the math. I can do things. If you ask me what makes me special, I can tell you, right? And then he said, so that's the positive outcome of 6 to 12. You are industrious. You know how to get things done. Not just self-esteem. And let me make that difference. Self-esteem says, I'm awesome. I'm a good soccer player, right? I'm smart. That's positive self-esteem. And we want that. But actually, that inner efficiency or that industrious feeling, that's better because what those kids say is, I can learn how to get myself on the A train if I need to. I can figure out the 3 steps it takes to make scrambled eggs. So when you're industrious, it says either I can figure it out or I know that there are multiple steps and I will learn how to figure this out. Okay. So that's the difference. So Erik Erikson said basically, if at the end of this, though, you don't know that because you didn't have a lot of opportunities to fail, you didn't have a lot of opportunities to try new things, you will feel inferior. And what happens in adolescence, 13, 14, an inferior kid is a kid who lacks confidence, has low self-esteem, takes less risk, isn't the kid who's going to raise their hand. They're not going to be as good in leadership. There's some big outcomes if from the ages of 6 to 12, a kid doesn't figure out how to be industrious.
Wow, that's very good. So I really want to focus on the emotional regulation and the emotional ups and downs of this middle childhood. But before we talk about that, I want to know what's your favorite topic from the book? And remind me again how old your own children are?
Yes, right now my own children are 17, 15, and 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
So you exiting the stage forever, it seems like.
Yes, I am. And I'm all sad about it. And I'm doing the grieving already. Yeah.
What did you learn about your parenting? What was hard for you knowing all this information, right? You're an expert. Like, how did you do the middle childhood the first time around, the second, and the third time around? Was there a difference in your approach?
There is no doubt that the third is going to be the most industrious. There's no doubt, right? Inherently, because he's the third. And they were, like when he was born, their ages were 5, 3, and infant. So they were still pretty young. So he's way more self sufficient. And I talk to him even in a way like if he says, "Oh, I'm hungry," I look at him and I'm like, "Okay, well, the kitchen's right there. Go make yourself something. You're hungry. Dinner's not for 3 more hours. I'm not making you some special meal." If kid number one said, "I'm hungry," I'd be, "Okay, honey, well, let's go get you a snack." And so, the feeling of like, you got this, you can do this. I'm not here to baby you. And it's like, I know the third is the baby. And that was something I think that I probably went above and beyond to be like, I mean, definitely the first 2 years, we all embraced that he was the baby and he was a super cute baby. But then, this is so funny, we have it on video. When he was 2 years old, he got, thank God we got it on video and I wrote in the book. I gave him the book for his birthday. So he's opening it and we have it on video, The Boss Baby. And that was before they made the movie. And he was so large and in charge. And so we started calling him Boss Baby. We're like, "Okay, boss. Okay, boss." And so at the end of the day, though, that kid really is the one who puts things together. Like if he gets a gift, right, a toy or something that has to be put together, the other two are going to sit and wait for somebody to put it together for them. He's going to do it himself. He is very entrepreneurial. So he goes, there's a golf course nearby. He gets the balls that people left behind. He bought a cleaning kit and he did this 100% by himself. Like the other day, he actually opened his closet and said, "This is what I've been doing." And he has like all these bins lined up, marked with like a sticky note and a marker, like $1 balls, $3. He's going to resell them. He's like, "I'm going to go." Right. And so that's him. And so he was the third, and he was only 10 when I first started writing this book. So I was like very aware of like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I would say my middle, he will say he feels like a middle, right? And I would say, like when I was pregnant with my third, I wanted the third to be a girl because I was so aware that the middle kid will feel lost. I was like, he'll be special. If I have another girl, then it'll keep the middle kid the only boy, and then that'll make him special. But no. So I would say with him, I didn't make him industrious enough. I really didn't. I think for multiple reasons. They were very close in age, right? Like there was only 2 years apart. So I put a lot of responsibility in terms of more like mothering and nurturing onto my daughter. And I don't feel bad about that though, because she seems to naturally, she naturally has it. And then I really instilled it in her. So I think she feels very industrious. So now I'm talking about the 17-year-old. Again, I'm skipping over the middle. But the 17-year-old, I think she feels like it's so funny. She's a junior in high school, and I still do like today's the first day of school pictures. So it's kind of like a joke now with her. So, but she still holds it and it says like, today's August 17th. It's the first day, 11th grade. When I grow up, I want to be. And to this day, it still says a mom. That's all she wants to be. So she got to be industrious in what she's always, since she's 7 years old. I literally have her, it was a bring your kid to work day, and I do work at a news station here. And so I pitched it to them and I said, "Well, wouldn't that be cute? Why don't I bring her?" And they're like, "Oh yes, do it." So she's sitting there at the news station and they said to her, "Oh, so when you grow up, what do you want to be?" And she's like, "A mom." And everyone's like, "Ah, that's so cute." But that's what she's always wanted to be. So in the sense with her, I think what I did well was like sort of read her, and I saw this nurturing like child part. So I let her, we call her Big Mama, and she just takes care of her brothers and like, she does that. And then the middle, I think he got taken care of almost by his bookends, and I allowed it. And so he's the least industrious. And so now I'm working on it at 15, right? So like I'm hopefully for the parent listening right now who maybe they have a couple kids and one of them maybe is young, but the other one is a teenager, and they're like, "Oh, great. Well, I wasn't thinking about these things." Like I didn't do a great job with making him industrious. That probably in sports I did because he's a natural athlete, but nothing else, not like the life skills. And so now I'm doing it. So what? I started at 14 being like, yeah, you need to do your own laundry. Your sister's been doing that since she was 12. Yeah, here's how to unload a dishwasher. Like he got the middle in terms of everybody does everything for him. So, that's how it played out for me.
Yeah. I mean, it is crucial, right? To get kids to do those things. These are life skills. They need it. But what if you get resistance from the kids? I feel like some things, if you instill early on and maintain, it becomes so habitual and a skill. And the things that like I fail to instill, I can see that they're not like second nature. You have to work a little hard. So my advice always to parents of younger children is like start now. The things that you want your teenager to do, start now. Whether it's the laundry, picking up, making the bed, as early as 3, 2, start now. Instill those skills and help them learn those skills consistently, right? So that you can see those skills later. It's very interesting because in middle childhood, like you said, they feel capacious, they feel industrious, they feel self-confident if they can get things done on their own. Such a good feeling. And that gives a foundation, lays a foundation, as you said, for teenagers. And we know, and you write about this in the book, the health crisis in our youth is such a big issue. The pandemic revealed a lot, right? But the pandemic didn't cause most of those issues. They were there. Maybe it shed light, or maybe some of it was because of the pandemic. But parenting and how we approach and what we teach our children plays a huge role. I feel like we can never underestimate our role as parents. It's a foundation. Each stage, it seems like a building block towards the next step, right? Because most parents are like, somehow they cut out these teenage years and they think it's the worst time. But no, if you did all those other building blocks sort of, I don't want to say correctly, that's not the right word, then it will be easier, right? If it's like a Lego building, if you build the tower from bottom up, why the top would be bad, right? It all depends on the previous step.
Yes, I mean, you really are getting the essence of why I did this. I mean, when I was, thinking about, I mean, the pandemic happened, right? So it's 2020, and I spent 2020 truly talking in the media 5, 6 days a week, being asked questions. And I'm like, I hope this is new for all of us. I hope I'm answering this right? I'm doing my best, talking a ton about burnout. And then 2021 came, and I was like, I mean, once we called a state of emergency in May of 2021, it was like, I absolutely have to be a part of an answer, a helpful piece of this, right? We are in an actual state of emergency with youth. And so there were probably two things that led me to write this book. But one of them was I kept thinking, because teenagers, straight up teenagers, are really my favorite group of kids to work with. So it felt natural to want to write a book about teens. But I thought, I don't want to people to feel hopeless, but you can't wait till a kid is 14, 15 to be starting the work. Now, if you've never done it and they're 14 or 15, sure, of course, start it. But I actually felt like I don't want to be a part of like, here's the problem. We have depression, we have anxiety at record rates, and here's what to do. I want to prevent it from ever happening. This book is about prevention. It really, truly is like a health prevention book. I mean, a disease really prevention book. And so I was like, went backwards. And then I have been doing this class called Start with the Talk, which is really a mother-daughter puberty class. I've been doing it for this is my 12th year. And I keep seeing younger kids coming in and realizing, and this also the pandemic revealed, that we have all these kids either going into precocious puberty or just earlier puberty. And my agent called me and she said, listen to this episode on the Daily. And it was about, they had a pediatrician on and she was talking about kids going into puberty earlier and earlier. And that at age 8, that's still considered, that's the end, like that's the early side of average. If a kid starts puberty at age 8, normal.
They start at age 8, do you mean physiologically? Like, what do you mean by that? Let's help the listener to understand this.
Yes.
When
So
you,
at eight,
yeah.
yes, it doesn't mean like for a girl, it doesn't mean that she started her menstrual cycle because a menstrual cycle usually begins 1 to 2 years after the first signs of puberty. So here's something that even for me, being a puberty educator, it really like hit home when I was deep into the research, which is puberty starts in the brain. And you do not see that. What you see is the beginnings of moodiness. That's where it starts. That labile moodiness, that I want to hold your, right? Think of an 8-year-old. I want to hold your hand still and I want to like cuddle with you. And then the next day they're like, ew, why are you wearing that? And you're like, wait, you're not supposed to be saying that to me. And like, don't sit next to me. And then 2 minutes later, like, oh, come and cuddle with me. Right. And you're like, and people will come in and say, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like my 8-year-old, like an 18-year-old, like, why are they acting like a teenager? And that had been happening for years. Right. And I don't even know that I fully connected the dots. And then it was like, because the pandemic. So one of the reasons that people think there is not one solid reason why our kids, and truly this is international too. This is not just our country. Around the world, puberty is trending earlier, younger and younger. And one of the reasons that a major factor is stress. It's probably the number one factor they think is stress and obesity. So stress. So pandemic came and endocrinologists were saying, we can't even get the amount of calls we're getting for 8 and 9-year-olds. We can't even get them in, right? It was 6, 9, even 12-month waits. I just had somebody recently, and we're not even in the pandemic anymore, that said, oh, I can't make it that day because we waited 9 months to see this endocrinologist for my 8-year-old who is getting pubic hair. So we're going to an endocrinologist. And so what I mean when I say puberty starts at 8 or 9, it starts with the moodiness. The next thing you might see, let's say in our girls, you might see the beginnings of breast buds. And again, because they're so young, you start thinking as a parent, I don't know, maybe they're holding a little extra fat there, right? Maybe it's not really quite a breast. Maybe that's just, right? Because you're just like, how is this happening? You're a second grader. How is this happening, right? And then what you see after that is there might be some armpit hair. There might be even some dots, maybe not pimples, And then people start going, oh my gosh, we got moodiness. We've got now bodily changes. My kid is only 9. What do I do? And is this a problem? Right. And so basically putting what was happening during the pandemic, plus the course that I was teaching, plus seeing this incredible, particularly adolescent mental health state of emergency, I was like, I'm not going to talk about adolescence. I'm going to talk about the stage before it so we can prevent this from happening.
And when you say precocious puberty, what do you mean by that?
So precocious puberty is the puberty in which you are concerned. So you have a 6 or 7-year-old that is starting to develop pubic hair, or for a boy, you start to see, because for a boy, girls on a physical level of signs is usually the breast buds. And for a boy, their scrotum gets bigger and their penis starts to grow. And a lot of parents don't see that because, they get to maybe 11 and 12 and you're not seeing them naked anymore. And so when you start to see the physical signs of puberty happening earlier, generally people do go to an endocrinologist and they're going to run blood work. They're looking at hormone levels. They're looking to see the bone growth development. Is this happening too fast? Is this because there's actually a quite long list of negative physical medical health outcomes from precocious puberty. Like the body isn't quite supposed to go into preparing for reproduction and sexual development as young as 6 and 7. And it's still rare, but it's still on the rise. What this book covers more so is the earlier puberty. So earlier meaning 8 to 10 for girls or 9 to 11 for boys is considered earlier, but still within the average.
Oh, wow. This is like its own topic and kind of alarming. If the food probably plays a role, right?
Environmental toxins.
I don't even want to think about this topic. Well, I want to ask you, not that it's not important.
Right. I know.
I want to focus on, what I want to cover today on the podcast, which is also another important topic. And of course, the listener can get your book and dive into those topics. The book has, different chapters. I'm interested in chapter 3 and 4 for this particular day conversation. The unexpected ups and downs, the emotional aspect, the emotional regulation of children and how we can help them. This is this consistent question, parents ask, my child is having big meltdowns, big emotional dysregulation. It's hard for parents, they don't know what to do, how to address it. They still, do they use punishments and consequences, rewards? Like, it's a confusing and very difficult part of parenting, the emotional dysregulation, right? So say a little more from what happens, what's normal, quote unquote, what's expected, and then maybe we'll give some tips.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The way, and it really actually was hard with this book. It was like, do I want to lead with middle childhood and then, like, what emotionally you can expect out of it? Do I want to lead with this whole idea that there's earlier puberty, right? So what I decided to do was kind of create that section 1 where I go through every single thing about puberty and provide scripts, because when you get to section 2, which is the chapters 3 and 4 you're talking about with the emotional dysregulation and the moods, the reader will have a sense of, okay, my kid probably isn't in puberty, or my kid might be in earlier puberty. Oh my gosh, maybe I'll call the doctor, right? You're going to go into that chapter already having established, where is my kid at in puberty? And when you get there and you start thinking about it, it's funny, the feedback that I got was this was almost everybody's favorite section. And sometimes as a psychologist, I do so much of it, I take it for granted. Like, to me, I'm like, oh, really? It is? And everyone's like, yes, I got so much out of that. And I'm like, it's a good reality check for me to remember. Like, if you're not focused on feelings and emotions, communication style, active listening, if you can't do that for yourself, nobody taught you, you're just getting by as a parent, you can't teach your kid what you don't know. And I think the reason why I relate it to that puberty, why I said that, is because there are so many parents that'll say to me, why do I have a 9 or 10-year-old that still tantrums like they're 2 or 3? I thought we were past this. Like, why is this so? This is embarrassing. Or my kid loses it. And I just didn't think, I think that once we get past those toddler years, we expect a level of emotional control that is actually not always reflective of developmentally what to even really expect. That's one option. Or the other one is, it really is so far outside of where they should be that if you don't intervene, and when I say you, I mean the parent, not the professional, maybe you will need to go to professional. But the healthiest thing that could happen is to say, I have a kid who really melts down, who doesn't accept failure well, who gets disappointed and like loses their mind, or they get physically aggressive sometimes. And we're going to work on that as a family, because I'm going to check in with myself first and say, where am I being triggered? What are my coping mechanisms? Is it to pour a glass of wine? Because your 8-year-old doesn't have that option. Is it to, work round the clock and become a workaholic? Is it to doom scroll, right? So adults we have our ways, and they're not always healthy, that we deal with stress, right? And that are not options for our kids. So it would be like me coming into your house and saying, I'm going to take away that iPad that you scroll on. I'm going to take away the wine you drink at night. I'm going to take away this, this, and this. Okay, now deal with disappointment and don't freak out, right? Because you're an adult and you can choose whether it's good for you or not, how you're going to deal with these things. But kids don't. They have such limited tools. They're incredibly limited. So that's how this section came to be. It also is what parents say on almost every referral call. And so I really try to, first and foremost, there's a couple times throughout the book where I say, now stop, think about your childhood. How did you deal with this? How did your parents talk to you or not talk to you about this? And I will say that the whole book has a trigger warning, because there were people who were, early readers who said they felt really triggered by the book, that they hadn't stopped to think about all the things that happened to them. And when you're talking about managing emotions and all the stressors that happen, for between 6 and 12 is when, if your parents are going to get a divorce, they're probably going to get a divorce. You're going to move. You're going to have a pet die. You might have a grandparent move in with you, or your parents are now taking care of them because they're sick and raising you. A parent might lose a job. There's actually, just as a family, a lot of big things that happen. And I think parents, you had mentioned something before, like we just think it's going to happen. I actually do think that for a lot of times we just think they get older and they learn how to deal with things. And this book is here to say, mm-mm. So I will share one of the paradigms because every chapter has like a paradigm shift. So here's the paradigm that I start off with these feelings, emotions. I say, the middle childhood years between kindergarten and middle school are a stable time. This is the paradigm, meaning this is what I think parents think right now. They are a stable time when kids just settle down. The days of tantrums are thankfully behind us. If my child is moody, it's just his personality or he'll grow out of it, right? Because I literally tried to channel in what do I hear people say? And this is just what they think, which I kind of get. They're like, oh, you're in kindergarten now, you're in first grade now. Like, deal with it, buddy, right? And then I say, this is the shift. So I say, children are going through a period of massive transition from 6 to 12, and parents need to understand that this often affects their mood, causing kids to act in confusing or upsetting ways. You can guide your child toward better emotional regulation, a skill he'll be able to use throughout adolescence and life. And this starts with you. This is how I feel it starts with us.
Yes, because it does. And I think to the point, like they will grow out of it, the toddler years are, gone. Why are we facing this? I feel like, and people somehow think like this will go away on its own and they will learn. How are they going to learn out of thin air? We need to teach them. There is coaching, there is teaching. This is a skill. When I work with people, I use that language that this is a skill set that we need to teach, because how many adults do we know who don't have emotion regulation skills? Believe me, their parents didn't coach and teach them, right? It never grew. Like if you don't cultivate something in your garden, you can't go to your garden, a few months later and demand from the soil the thing to come out of it. Like this is a skill we need to teach and actively work on. Now, some kids are a lot easier than others, and the hard ones are especially hard. And oftentimes they're so challenging that the parent becomes dysregulated and they resort to either withdrawal, right, which is very hard. They don't know how to address the dysregulation in children because they themselves get dysregulated. And so knowing that, I said this to a client this morning. She asked, how do I help my child with emotional regulation? I said, it starts with you. I said, how do you regulate your emotions in the moment or in general? Because by doing that, you're teaching and guiding and modeling, number one, right? And then you actively need to coach them with their skill building. And she's like, that's a lot of work. I have 4 kids. I'm like, well, I'm sorry that I'm the bearer of the bad news. But so let's give our listeners some practical tips. You talk about the window of tolerance. Can you talk about that, how you helped Ryan to draw the window? I like that very much. I think it's very practical.
Yes, yes. So what you're talking about for people who maybe don't have this language yet, but I think it's so helpful. And I use it in my personal life and I use it with every kid I work with. There is a psychologist at UCLA, Dan Siegel. And so this is his idea.
We had him on the podcast. So my listeners know who Dan Siegel is. He's a favorite here. Okay.
Oh, yes. He is a favorite, right? Thank God for Dan Siegel. I mean, he's amazing. So he has this idea of a window of tolerance, which means that, hey, when you're within the open window part, these are things you can tolerate. So, and again, it's a window. It opens and closes depending on the day, the situation, whether you're sick, whether you're hungry, all those things, right? So what I do with every kid is I have this big whiteboard in my office and I literally just start off with, I just make a simple window and I have a diagram in the book. I make a simple window and I say, usually they'll say, oh, whoa, we went to a birthday party this weekend. It was a nightmare. We had to get him out of there. He didn't want to leave. He threw a fit. And I said, so then we basically do, okay, so before that happened, what was happening? Because that was clearly within your window of tolerance, meaning like you could deal. Oh, I got up, I did this, I did that. Oh, someone even cut me in line to go down the slide. I didn't freak out. Okay, so I write it all in there. And then I'll say, and then when did the window all of a sudden start like shutting or slamming closed, meaning I got room for just about nothing, right? And so they'll say, oh, well, when my mom showed up and told me that we weren't going to go straight home, that we had to stop at the grocery store and then we had to drop my brother off here, there, and I just wanted to go home. Oh, okay. So then, we'll draw another window that says, change of plan. I'll just make it simple, something like that. And then the window's closed. And so they'll be like, yes. And so then what we start doing is we start talking about how do we start thinking about the day? So always trying to be proactive. What can I tolerate? Essentially, the window of tolerance is what can I tolerate? What can I deal with today? And what can't I? You know how like sometimes we'll say it naturally as adults. Let's say I'm driving somewhere and I get a flat tire. And what will instinctually come out of my mouth is some version of, I can't deal with this right now. I don't have any time in my day to be dealing with a flat tire, waiting for AAA on the side of a road. I can't, right? We basically say, I can't deal or I don't have time for this, right? And the insinuation is maybe sometimes I can deal, but right now I can't. That's the window of tolerance. And it is the easiest thing to see visually and hear of. And the thing that I love about it is it's like window of tolerance. So I say that to my kids. I'll say to them, listen, you guys, on Sunday, we got a bunch of things to do. We have to go here and we have to do this, whatever. And I don't use the term as much window of tolerance, but I'll say, so that's going to be a lot. And you might feel like at some point you're going to fatigue. So what are we going to do so that we can get through this? What are we going to do so that travel day goes well or whatever it is we're doing? And I'm constantly setting them up. When they were younger, I used the term more, and sometimes I do now, and sometimes it's just conversational. But it's like top of mind all the time. There are some days that me telling one of my own kids, like, put the phone away early tonight, take a shower tonight, even though you want to take it in the morning, brush your teeth and go to bed now. We've had a long day. You've got school tomorrow, right? There's some days where they're just like, okay. And they just do it. It's lovely, right? And then there's some days that if I were to say that without being mindful of what we're going through or what mood they're in or whatever, that me saying that is going to start a fight. Why do I have to go to bed? No, it's only 8:30. Why do right? And so if that happens, what I realize is that I am misattuned. If I don't know my kid well enough, and it's funny, it's not walking on eggshells. Attunement is another thing I talk about in the book, right? Like the window of tolerance when a kid is younger or really has a high emotional dysregulation, and a parent really will feel blind with it. Like they will be like, I don't know. I don't know how their window, when it opens and closes. And I say to them, I promise if you practice this, it's not a secret. It's not like your kid knows and they're not telling you. They don't know either. So then you're both learning. And I'm like big into saying like, let's become detective or a mood detective, whatever it's going to be, which essentially is instilling the idea that just be curious. We don't have all the answers. Like I do this all the time. I don't know always. Why? Why couldn't my kid deal with me telling them to go to bed early tonight? Why? But I'm mindful to not just bark orders or to rush around town everywhere or to place too many demands on them without attuning and checking in. What mood are they in? Are they hungry? Are they tired? They just have a fight with a friend, right? Because our windows open and close. If right before this conversation, I thought I was going to, something amazing was about to happen and the person calls me and says, the deal fell through and we're not going to be able to do that. Right now, my mood would be different. Right? My window of tolerance for like, I don't know, you asking me a question or whatever might be different because I just had this experience 30 minutes ago. I didn't get this thing I thought I was so excited about. Right? And so we just can slow down enough to essentially say, what can my kid tolerate? And what can't they? I'm going to base that off of history. I'm going to base that off of looking at them right now, just observation. And if I'm not sure, I'm going to be curious with them and I'm just going to ask and start a conversation. That, what I just said right there, I will tell you for 90% of families is actually life-changing.
Yeah. I think another point it's important to insert here is kids who are neurodivergent. So their window of tolerance can change drastically. I think parents of neurodivergent kids are more stressed and overwhelmed than tired. So now they have to do this extra work, and you never know. It's hard to read them and attune to them and interpret, right? So from experience, I know like that's hard for those parents. But if you're reading your child and coming from this curiosity learning perspective, then you know when they're in their window of tolerance, ordinary demands, they can meet the ordinary demands. But when they don't have that, the tolerance is very small. Even the ordinary demand, like let's go brush your teeth, let's put on your shoes, becomes a big, big task. And parents are like, but he knows how to do it. He did it yesterday. He does it every day. But well, today, his window of tolerance is slim. So I think just because they did it yesterday, the attunement is so key in knowing what your child needs today versus yesterday and shifting and not being this hard, you know, he can do this toughen up approach, lowering the demands or even eliminating the demands. Sometimes it calls for that so that it's easier for you and for the kid. And I like the window of tolerance. I also like Lisa, what is her name? Barrett's body budget. The body budget is another good way of looking at this. What's your body budget? Do you have that capacity in yourself? Lisa Feldman Barrett, she's a neuroscientist. The body budget is good too. We all understand budget, right? If there is money in your bank account, if it's a zero balance, then like you can't spend money. So the same is for your energy level. If your child had too many demands, a simple let's sit down and eat breakfast could be a big ask if the balance is zero. So having this understanding and being flexible, I think for parents can make a big shift.
Oh, yeah. And the more challenging or difficult that your child is, the more flexible you need to get. But yet, what we do under stress is we tend to get more rigid, right? We got to go now. Nope, I'm not going to do that thing that I know would probably help you because that's going to take me 2 more minutes. I'm mad. You're not listening. And we get more rigid. And I get that. We just, because our kids do it too. And we're very quick to call them out when they do it. But just remember, we do it too. I think, yes, there's so many, there's like not maybe so many, but there are a couple different metaphors. I always tell people like whatever works for you, but I want you to have this so ingrained in your mind that you're not trying. At first, you're going to be trying and you're going to be practicing. You're learning a new thing yourself. But then if you do it enough, it truly becomes second nature. And you'll start saying things like in the book, I have this diagram. I had someone actually make it so that's a little bit different from, some of the things that are out there. I will eventually get to a point that I'll say to kids, what are things that open your window of tolerance? So like more sunshine and, more fresh air comes in, right? You can like run with the metaphor if you want. And sometimes kids will say, oh, well, things that open my window are like when we're not running late, when I get warnings. I really like warnings. What do I have in the book? Oh, and when I sleep well, I don't have nightmares, when I get to play with my friends. Okay, cool. Great. And then what are some things that close your window? Oh, well, they always say late. That's because I work with a lot of kids with anxiety. So the kids I work with a lot are always like when I'm late. Being late, and I will tell you, there's a lot of parents that do. You're running around, you are running late, or you're stressed, so the whole car ride or whatever is tense, or you're distracted. Like those things that really stress kids out. But they'll say being yelled at closes my window. And so once you start just having your language, you just talk. So it's another way of basically saying, like, what's wrong with you? Like, what's the matter? Right? That's the frustration. What's the matter? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you listening? Those are three very common frustrated parenting terms. And if you can use, let's just say the metaphor still with the window, it just lands differently to say, I'm noticing right now your window seems pretty shut. It's almost closed, and it doesn't seem like this has been a tough morning. What are some things we could do to open up that window and let the sun shine in? It just for not every kid, but for a lot of kids, they're going to respond a lot better to that.
Yeah, and it's very empowering, right? I think key what I took away from this is yes, it's one thing to teach this to a parent, another thing to teach the kid too, so that he is actively involved in learning, in self-care, self-regulation. Um, what other skills are there in this chapter? Active listening, validation. I really want people to take away concrete tools. Um,
I'd say a concrete tool that, because mentioned self-regulation. I also talk about co-regulation.
mhm.
And I think that's a concrete tool. It's something that I use. I used to work in residential treatment, right? So we had kids who were in congregate care. And I was, a clinical director of the residential program and a day treatment program. So whether they were in a small school setting or they were living there, like sometimes, I get the call, my God, the kids are off the wall. All right. And so what does co-regulation mean? So first of all, they did the right thing to call somebody else because they're in it. So now what's happening truly is they are at the same matched level of stress as the kids, right? So now it's like the kids are stressed, the people in charge of them are stressed. And so it's a smart idea, if you can, right, to bring in somebody who's not stressed, just simply put. So we go in. A co regulator means that I have the dominant energy, right? And you're going to feed off of my energy, but I'm not there to do my fancy tricks and interventions. Co regulation says there is a process called entrainment. If I sit next to you, right, and you're stressed out about something, and I sit next to you, I'm really calm. If I just focus on calm, I'm going to maybe breathe. Maybe I'm going to talk really slow. My body language is going to be so non-threatening, right? You get lower than a kid. That helps. You sit down, right? And don't say anything. Just be a presence. That's called co-regulation. And you can use that your whole life. You can adult to adult, adult to child, adult to infant, adult to toddler. It's a process. And it's something that I learned from, I think what I remember from Bruce Perry's work about 20 something years ago, like 22 years ago or something. And I just remember he would say, the most dominant energy in the room is what's going to dominate the room. So if you got kids going crazy and you got to intervene with somebody, you go straight to the hardest kid. You calm them, the rest of the room will calm, right? But if you decide, let me go to the kids who are like not causing too much problem, you're not doing anything to change the energy of the room, right? So ever since I learned that in the sense of residential care, group home kind of care for kids, and those are our toughest kids, you just can apply that in a regular family. It is the concept of everything's going pretty well, and dad walks in the door, right? A very stereotypical example. He's in a bad mood. He was sitting in traffic, whatever, and the whole energy of the house changes. But he didn't say anything. He just walked in, put his stuff down, and everybody gets tense. That's entrainment.
It's like Wi-Fi transmission, like you immediately, it affects everyone. I mean, it's contagious. Stress and negative emotions and positive ones are contagious, but the negative ones, it seems like they spread like a virus. I like what you're saying, and I want to emphasize something because most people, most parents, we want to be proactive and do something and solve a problem. That doing part is so ingrained. When I tell parents, just be, like, your presence, your regulated state of being is already a tool. They're like, but what do I do? What do I do? Like, that's enough, right? I just want to bring this home and tell parents they always want to like exceed and do more. Sometimes doing less in this situation is so key. Like, if you are calm and regulated, your presence is gonna make that shift happen. That's a tool. Like, you don't need extra things. You do, like active listening, validation, and all those other skills, but that comes a little later, right? Like the first step, for lack of a better way of saying it, is this co-regulation, is that energy that you bring, the posture that you take, the gestures, the facial expression is on your face. That's the tool. So I wonder if you can say a little more about this. I want people to know that they are doing something when they are showing up like this. That's an important thing that they are doing, you know?
They're doing they're doing the work. Okay, so picture you whoever you're picturing in your head, your 8, your 9, your 10-year old, right? One of the problems is that you're gonna what you and I are talking about doing is you're doing the work that you did when they were 2, 3, and 4 days old, when they were 1 minute old, right? When that child of yours, who's now bigger and taller and maybe smellier and all the things, right? When they were an infant and they cried because you didn't know even know why, but you knew they needed something, you didn't know what, you had your tools. The first thing you did was you picked them up, right? And you held them against your chest and we start bouncing. Shh. And then we start shushing, right? Or you stick your finger in their mouth so they can suck your finger, whatever, right? We got these little things. And all of a sudden, you figured it out. And then the baby was calm. And day after day, you learn more and more, right? And then day after day, you knew that cry means this cry means that. But you didn't know that they're brand new. They just were born. So what you did when you were a parent of a 1 day old of your first child is you just read them. You just basically knew you had to stay calm. And let's say you went to the pediatrician and oh my God, maybe they're colic. I don't know. They're crying and they're doing all these things all day long. The first thing usually a pediatrician will say to you is, do you have help? Are you sleeping? Right? Because they know if I'm the parent and I have had it, and if I pick up my baby like people do, and I'm not saying shake a baby, but I'm saying that, why are you crying still? I got it, right? The baby will just keep crying more and more and more. And we know that even if nobody said it to us, and then okay, I need a timeout. You might put the baby down, they're going to be crying in that crib. You're going to walk away, and then you're going to get calm or, get coffee, whatever it is you need. And you go back, repick the baby up that's crying, and you say, it's okay, mama's here, and you start talking soothing and you start getting the things that they want. In a few minutes, you figure it out. And I want to say, to make this concrete, when you're in that situation, you got your big kid who you never thought was going to keep crying and tantruming or being so difficult. 10 years later, go back to the basics. And truly, if they will let you hold them, touch them, go for it. Some kids like it still, some kids don't, but still ask for permission. Oh, honey, you're so upset. Can I just hold you? Oh, can I sit next to you? Can I get you a blanket? Right? Go back to the basics. Get them in a state of comfort. No, get away, blah. Then you check in with yourself. How am I feeling right now? Am I getting frustrated? There's another adult here. Should I go trade out with them? Because am I in that place, And that's what you want to do. Think of them as the baby, because I remember those moments too when I had an infant, they were crying. I remember the times where I would go in or wake up my husband and just say, I've been up with the baby for 45 minutes. And every time I put her down, she starts crying. Can you take over? Right? That was me saying, I'm out of my resources. My window is closing. I'm not going to be a great co-regulator for this kid because I'm frustrated. I'm tired. I want to go sleep. So for me, that's one practical thing is sometimes think of them as a baby, go back to the basics.
Yes, that's good advice. What I like, and then we'll finish soon, what I like about the book is you teach the kids skills, right? Like stop, breathe, think, then act. Because we want to give our children emotion regulation skills. They are skills and we need to teach them, and we can't cover all of those skills in one episode. But briefly, I want you to talk about that. Of course, it's good to have vocabulary for feelings and have a chart and all of those things, label feelings and all of that. But I feel like maybe I should say, like, it can go far too. I feel like too much psychologizing. We started this conversation before we recorded from that. I feel like many parents overdo it sometimes and it can backfire. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. And you also have to judge based on your kid, I feel like, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought this part up. So this section, right? If we call this section 2, it's all about moods and, emotional regulation. So what I did was, and I didn't know I was going to do it, and then it just naturally evolved, is like you said, what we were just talking about is this chapter where it's all about the parents. Okay, parents, your kid's going to have these moods, some more than others. Here's what you need to have. Great. Then the next chapter is the first one's what parents can do. The second one is what kids can do. And you are exactly right. We are going to be there all the time to be this co-regulator, to, be having this languaging. And that's why I don't get too deep into it. Just find your metaphor. Is it a window? Is it a whatever it's going to be? The body, whatever. And then, the bucket. Remember, for a long time, it would be like, that fills my bucket. That, dumps my bucket, whatever metaphor. First part is like your stuff. The second part is, though, we have to teach our kid, actively teach our kids skills. And that is definitely, it's not all on the parents. What's on the parents is first to check in with yourself. What triggers me? When am I great? When am I not? I got to watch myself. What am I modeling for my kid? Okay, now what am I going to actively teach them? And just like you said, I don't know if we were recording when you said that, when you were talking to when you were talking to your client this morning and they said, oh my God, I have 4 kids. This is a lot. And it's like, it is, but kids, their brains are ripe and ready to learn, right? So if you consistently do this, sometimes I say, just give it 2 weeks. I don't think you'll have to do this more than 2 weeks. It's not 2 years. It's just teach them. They'll find success with it. They'll get reinforced. Boom, they're off to the races. So in the next chapter, the unexpected emotional ups and downs, what kids can do version is teaching them how to do this for themselves when you're not there, or when they're alone, or they're sitting in their room, or they're 17, or they're off in college, right? What are they going to do? So I give them tools. One of them is being a feelings detective, which is AKA just being curious about your own feelings. The reason why this is important is because you'd be surprised how many kids don't have very many feelings words. If you say to them, give me some feelings words, happy, mad, sad, boom. You learn that somehow in preschool, and sometimes they don't learn too much more than that. And I'll say, oh, come on, you can come up with more feelings. Think about all the feelings. And it can be hard for some kids, right? And so I want them to have nuanced words like happy, mad, sad, right? Well, give me 3 more words for happy. Because 3 more words for happy, if a kid has that, they understand that there's actually different ways of being happy, right? There's excited, content, whatever, elated, let's say. Cool. And then I challenge them to use sometimes those words. And then we get to mad or sad. And then I want them to have disappointed, frustrated. I was let down, embarrassed, humiliated. And we take it for granted because we do over time. I don't know about you, but nobody sat me down and said, let's expand your feelings vocabulary. Nobody did that with me, but life taught me those things. But I will tell you, I think particularly as a teenager, I would have been better off had I had more ways to express myself, right? As opposed to I could go on and on, so many examples, but teenagers will get into interpersonal conflicts a lot with friends, right? Who they like, whatever, teachers. And I'm like, wait, but what's another way we could say that? That's the curiosity. I am not giving them the answers. I'm not going to give them words that also don't resonate with them, but I'm going to ask them, do you think there's another way you could ask that? And they might say, oh, I was so mad. And I'll say, do I have permission to share with you actually what I really think you were? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, I think you were defensive. Oh, yeah, I guess I was kind of defensive. She was accusing me of, okay, let's go one layer deeper. So if you're defensive, what are you really? Well, I'm just scared that they're going to, right? And so this is just in conversation. Oh, so you're scared because that is the root. The book, I write this in there and I teach us all the time. Truly, I really do believe there are 2 primary human emotions. It's love or fear. And all those other words and feelings, vocabulary just stems from love or fear. And so what's really cool is when I'm working with families, when they have kids who have a lot of episodes of dysregulation, they will go to it. They'll be like, all right, I'm thinking fear. What are they fearful of? We can look at our kids with so much more compassion and be in a place to teach them when we say they're scared, right? They kicked the thing after the game or whatever. They were scared because they didn't have a good game and they're humiliated and they feel embarrassed that maybe they're not going to be asked to come back on this team. It all will come down to fear of something. So that's what one of the things that I tell parents to do. And I say, I actually have updated a feelings chart. I put it in the book. They can print it off. You can put it on your refrigerator. You can have a kid just point to it. I love this because it doesn't have to be all talk. How was your school day today? Fine. Oh, really? Fine. Can you just point to any of the feelings that you experienced today that I wouldn't know because I wasn't there? They point to something. And if they're not in the mood, that's when you attune and go, okay, they pointed to like proud. And I really want to know what they were proud about, but I'm not going to say right now they're not in the mood to talk. And then maybe at bedtime I go, that was really cool when you pointed to proud today. I would love to know what happened that made you feel proud. Right? And this is ways that you can continue to expand their understanding of themselves, of other people. Why did somebody do what they did? Why did the teacher embarrass you? Why? They get the answers for themselves when they actually have the words to define it. So, that's another example. And really the spirit of the book is that you can be the teacher. You are the primary teacher of your child, and you can be the advanced teacher of your child, even though you only see them, when they're in this stage, you don't see them that much, not the way you did when they were 0 to 5. So the time you have is really precious and important.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add before we say goodbye? Because I feel like you and I can talk.
Oh yeah, we could talk all day.
We can talk all day.
I would just say, in the 2 sections, I have a little, sort of like a checklist, like, does this sound familiar? And that give you a good sense of how many things were you sort of like, yes, my kid's a yes for all these things. It'll give you a good sense of like, yeah, how serious is this? How much, should I be invested in this? And then every chapter has a looking ahead, because remember, this to me is the roadmap also to a healthier adolescence. So I try to put like a looking ahead in each section, like almost to inspire you, like looking ahead. Here's the kind of situations your teenager is going to be in. If you can help them with some of the skills that were just in this chapter, they're going to navigate that really differently than if they don't have the skills. So, I love it because it keeps you really present in saying what I do today actually really is important. And it also gives you that sense of like, I'm doing something to prevent the anxiety and the depression and all the negative things that, many, and I mean truly millions of, adolescents are going through right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. I really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations on the book. I'm really excited. It's a really good, helpful, valuable book. And you can come to the podcast anytime. We can
well, thank you.
Talk about other things. Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. I hope it was helpful for the listener.
I hope it was too. Thank you so much for having me on and for taking the time and care to really kind of dive into it. I loved it.
That concludes today's conversation, my dear listener, and I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Be sure to hit that follow button so you don't miss future episodes, and take a moment to leave a rating and review. It really helps others find the show. I would love to hear your thoughts and takeaways. Join the conversation in the Authentic Parenting Facebook group or visit the contact page at authenticparenting.com/contact to get in touch. Authentic Parenting is an ad-free show, and your donations is what makes this podcast possible. Support the show by visiting authenticparenting.com/support or becoming a patron at patreon.com. Your contributions make it possible for me to continue bringing you weekly episodes. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.